Embarrassing questions, controversial questions, questions that might be really stupid. I asked you guys to send me the tabletop questions that you're too scared to ask, and now I'm gonna answer them. We're keeping it low-key this week because, to be totally honest with you, I am exhausted. We kicked off the month with Gen Con, where I thoroughly overbooked myself, and then I came home and immediately launched my new adventure book, Trouble on the Fae Train, and then I turned right around and flew to LA to roll a giant D20 down a hill for Patreon. I am not complaining, all of this has been awesome, but it's also been a lot, so I've poured myself a mimosa, and we are venturing into unscripted territory, folks. Let's tackle the questions you are too scared to ask unless they're anonymous. And while I can't name you, I can and might still shame you. Okay. If it's clear that there's one person that isn't vibing with the rest of the group, what should you do? I've played a couple games where there's one person who brings a very different energy to the table, and we would all be more comfortable without them there. No one knows how to proceed other than just tough it out with them there and then not invite them back for the next campaign. Okay, I will be real with you. You have two options, and both of them have discomfort attached. You can be honest, even if it's painful, or you can push through playing with someone you don't enjoy playing with, even though it's painful. The question is really whether you want short-term discomfort or long-term discomfort, because continuing to play with someone that you know is not a good fit is long-term discomfort. And it's long-term discomfort for your whole table, whereas kicking someone out of a group is short-term discomfort for you, just for you. And for the person you're kicking out, obviously. I do think it's important to mention that being honest doesn't mean being cruel. You could be kindly honest. Telling them that you think they're not a good fit for the group might hurt their feelings, but you don't have to say things to hurt their feelings, you know? Like, you can be honest about them not being a good fit for the group without being like, because you never shut the f up. Like, you don't have to be a jerk about it. But even if you're nice, there are some people who just are not gonna cope well with hearing a difficult truth, like being uninvited to a D&D game. There are some people who will just be upset about that, and maybe they'll be upset about it forever. And I think what's important to remember here is that that's not your responsibility. In the end, it's like, do you wanna surround yourself with people that you can't be honest with? Because if you have a friend who you just don't think you could tell them that they're not a good fit for a D&D game, I don't know, like, that doesn't seem like the ideal kind of friendship to me. But that's like tier 3 social mastery. Like, not everybody is there yet, and not everybody wants to be there. Some people are perfectly happy to continue white lying to their friends in order to avoid conflict. That's your own decision to make. I think if you do decide that you're just gonna push through it and keep playing with someone that you know isn't a good fit, your main responsibility is to recognize that that's a choice you're making. Because if you start building up resentment over a choice you made and that changes how you treat this person, that's not fair to them, because they don't know any of this. Like, you have chosen not to let them into this conflict. And I do think it's important to remember this is a choice you're making not just for you, but for your entire table. So is everyone at the table's discomfort worth not upsetting this person or not having that difficult conversation? That's the bottom line. How do I use legendary actions in the right way? Like, how often?
Look at me in my eyes. Look at me.
This took me way too long to figure out because I'm a scaredy cat, but this is fundamental. You should be using your monster and villain abilities as early and as often as you can. You should hit them as hard as you can. You should do everything. If you are given 3 legendary actions per round, use 3 legendary actions per round. This is how monsters and challenge rating was designed. If you are not playing to win, monsters will be underpowered. So you just do everything. How do you DM through intimate moments without making it incredibly awkward for everyone? Okay, well, first up, for most tables, DMing an intimate moment, as in like a sex scene, it will be awkward for everyone. Don't let anybody convince you that most tables are out here role-playing sex. It is not the norm. For the vast majority of tables, I would say the solution is fade to black. Most people are not comfortable with anything further than that. In fact, I think at a huge percentage of tables, sex doesn't even get mentioned. And the thing is, even if intimacy doesn't specifically refer to sex here, like, there are all kinds of levels of intimacy that people are uncomfortable with. I think there are plenty of people who would be uncomfortable even role-playing, like, kissing at their table. If you're at a table where every single person there, or even just one of the people there, would feel very awkward about role-playing an intimate moment, then, like, just don't do it. The easiest way is just don't do it. But if you have a group that, like, really wants to try that, and everybody is interested in, like, more adult roleplay, then there's a few things you absolutely have to do. One, you gotta identify everybody's boundaries like very firmly. You gotta have safety tools in place in case anybody changes their mind. So even if somebody agreed to something up front, if they start feeling uncomfortable in the middle of it happening, they need an easy way to say that. And basically just everybody needs to give informed consent for this. And like if people have partners outside of or at the table, they probably need to also be in the conversation. Like it's just everybody's got to know what's going on and why it's happening and how it's happening and agree to it in order for it to be cool. I don't know what I'm doing with my hand. Basically, if you feel like everybody at your table would be awkward about role-playing an intimate moment, you don't have to role-play an intimate moment. Don't force yourself into that. I do have a video about role-playing romance. There are some tools like mechanics rule sets. If you don't want to have to like play out the notebook line by line, there's mechanics that can help you incorporate romance into your games without having to like dig deep into the emotional roleplay of it. But I don't think that like sex belongs at most D&D tables. No kink shaming for the people who do it. But like, just don't, it's not the norm. Just don't expect it to be the norm. Is splitting the party really that bad? Yeah. It's pretty much always just a recipe for like half the table completely checking out of the game. How do I access thousands of high-res battle maps, fantasy scenes, and unique tokens on a budget? Wait a second. Who submitted this one? Sounds an awful lot like today's sponsor. You've heard me praise Cheipeku many times over the years. It is my absolute favorite place to find beautiful hand-drawn maps, scenes, and tokens to make my DM prep easier and my games more immersive. And yes, I get paid to talk about them now, but I have been a Cheipeku subscriber way longer than they've been sponsoring me. I truly love their stuff. And great news, they recently launched the Essential tier for just $15 a month. You can get maps, scenes, or tokens, each with an add-on option for animated variations, VTT integration, and customization. So you can pay less to get just what you need. What kinds of maps and scenes do they have? I am so glad you asked, real person who is definitely not me. Maps like the mysterious Druid Grove come with over a dozen variations, including season, weather, time of day,
Dark presence.
and the scenes have variants like this too, so you can match them to your games. This Imperial Bath complex makes me wish I could dive into artwork like Mary freaking Poppins. The only thing better than a spa day would be a spa day with these cute water nymph tokens. I'll have what she's having. Oh, it's a toxic red algae bloom. I'll stick with water. And those are just a few of the over 8,000 maps you can access with the Fantasy Maps Essential tier. Would you say it's the Cheipeku we all love, now at a lower price? I would, and I guess I just did. So check out the link in the description for a more affordable way to get my all-time favorite maps, scenes, and tokens. And thanks again to the total stranger who sent in these 3 questions about today's sponsor. But if you don't mind, I think I'm gonna get back to the on-topic questions now, okay guys? Jeez. How are you able to tell if you're actually good at being a DM or if your friends are just being nice? To whoever submitted this question, I just want you to know you are not alone. Here are some other questions that I got along this same line. Did my players actually have fun or are they just lying to me? How do I know I'm not fooling myself into thinking I'm good enough to DM? Maybe I'm just an seeking attention. How do you get over DM imposter syndrome? I feel like every time I DM, I panic and think the group isn't having fun even if they are. There's even a question from a player who feels anxious after sessions, second guessing how they engage with other players and regretting not being more involved in certain scenes. Y'all are an anxious lot, which makes sense because like attracts like. I mean, first of all, I promise you that nobody is giving you 4+ hours every week or 2 because they don't enjoy what they're doing. Like if your players keep showing up, they probably like the game. There isn't really a good reason to keep going otherwise. But you know, the thing about anxiety is that rational logic doesn't undo it. I know that very well. So I will also tell you some of the things that have helped me cope with my own anxiety. 1, you gotta believe what people say, and they might not even be telling you the truth. They might not be having a good time and they might be lying to you, but like it's not your job to intuit some sort of deeper meaning that they're not speaking. Your job is to hear what they say and believe it, and their job is to hear what you say and believe it, because that's how we have a society. There's this thing that I do that maybe you do, it's called mind reading. My therapist calls it mind reading. You can't read people's minds, but you sort of act like you do, and you try to imagine what they're actually thinking and what they're not saying to you, and then you act based on what you imagine they are secretly thinking. Just a bad way to live your life, bad way to interact with people. Another thing that has helped me with anxiety, identify those like irrational thoughts and feelings, if not when they're happening, which is hard to do, at least afterwards. So if you come away from your game and you think, all my friends secretly hate me, they're lying to me, they had a miserable time, you can identify that and you can recognize that's probably not a rational feeling. They wouldn't be showing up for 4 hours every week if they hated being here. Why would my friends lie to me? There's no good reason for that. If you can recognize that that's an irrational thought, then you can separate yourself from the feelings that it causes you. And ideally, in the long run, you learn to recognize those irrational thoughts while they're happening, and then you don't have to have the same response, the same body response that you're having to it now. This is literally just me trying to give people therapy. How do I make this fun YouTube content? Last thing, for my anxiety practice always reduces the fear. The more that I do something, the more comfortable I get with it and the less it stresses me out. And that has certainly been my experience with DMing and with playing. Like the vulnerability of DMing, it lessens the more you do it. I don't know if that's true for everyone, but it's true for me. Not to just state the obvious, but therapy's good. If your anxiety is getting in the way of you having a good time hanging out with your friends, then you should probably see a therapist and they would probably be able to help you. Also, maybe you're good at being a DM and your friends are nice. Both of those things can be true. As for the question of whether or not dungeon masters are just assholes seeking attention, I mean, listen, there is an element of attention seeking in the desire for performance, and DMing is in many ways a performance, and that's okay. You don't have to feel bad if you want people to participate in your games and be like, good job, I like what you're doing. That's allowed. You're allowed to want that. Seeking attention doesn't make you an asshole. Now, if you're an asshole, that's a separate thing, separate problem. What is the point of ability scores? In my opinion, they're vestigial. They're like tied to an earlier version of the game. These days, there are very few parts of the game that actually engage with the full ability score and not just the modifier. I truly think that the future of the game is modifiers only. Why are you booing me? I'm right. Ooh, this one's pretty juicy. I sometimes find myself in discussions with other D&D fans where anything WotC does is bad, and I feel like I'm being accused of being a corporate shill if I don't share that opinion. Is it worth arguing, or is it just a lost cause? Oh boy. I am familiar with this one. I've been accused of being a shill on the same video where I'm also accused of being too hard on WotC, so everybody's gonna draw their lines in different spots here. They're a controversial company in this hobby, and we're never all gonna agree. I mean, it does suck that people treat it as so black and white, like either you're boycotting or you're a shill, there's no in between, but in reality, I think that most people fall somewhere in between, if they are even aware of the antics of the company at all, which a ton of D&D players just aren't. They're not worried about what the corporation's doing, they're just playing their games. But among the people who are aware of what the company's doing, I think the vast majority of people fall somewhere in a much more moderate space of like, they don't think that WotC is an evil company run by the literal devil, but they also don't agree with every single thing they do and have criticisms. But here's how I have handled this, because it is a thing that I have had to handle. People have a lot of opinions about what they think I think about WotC. Number one, I think you gotta feel really confident in your own stance. And if you don't feel confident yet, then like do some research. I don't know, do some journaling or talk it out with somebody. Make sure that you feel like you've decided for yourself where you stand on issues of like how the company behaves and what that means for you. If you've come to your own conclusion that you can stand by, that makes it a lot harder for someone else to make you feel stupid or second guess yourself. Number two, I think you just gotta figure out what you want out of that conversation. Like if you do decide to argue with them, what are you trying to get out of it? Who does it serve? Do you think you're gonna change their mind? Do you wanna change their mind? And if not, then like why are we fighting? I used to be one of those people who was like, yeah, I pick my battles. I just pick all of them. But that is exhausting. And also it is just a recipe to like be pissed off all the time. Unfortunately, with age comes not just wisdom, but exhaustion. And I am now too tired to pick every battle. So I try to ask myself before getting in a disagreement with someone, what do I want out of this? Is it worth it to actually have a conflict here? You can always just say, well, agree to disagree and like move on to other things. And if they're like, no, I will not agree to disagree, you suck and your opinions are bad and you're a bad person, then you're like, okay, I guess this is not a person I want to spend time with, you know? I just don't generally hang out with people who don't allow me to have my own opinions. Like there are things that it is reasonable to end friendships over, disagreements. Like if I had a friend who was like, yeah, I don't know, I just think all gay people should die, I would be like, okay, we're not friends anymore. But like this is not that kind of issue, guys. Dungeons and Dragons, it's Dungeons and Dragons. Can any class have a pet / companion creature / whatever the right word is? So any character can have a pet, but if you have an animal companion, there are game mechanics attached to it. You can have a cat, you just can't like send it into battle or send it scouting or anything. thing. From a game design perspective, this is just to make sure that subclasses like the Beastmaster Ranger have unique abilities. Like if everybody could have an animal companion that can do all those things, there would be nothing special about that subclass. How do I know if I'm burnt out or just have writer's block? Burnout is like long-term stress or pressure or overwork that's like built up. So does your game stress you out? Has it been stressing you out for a while? Do you like feel a sense of dread before you go to a session? Do you feel like maintaining the game takes more work than it is reasonable for you to commit? Because if all of those things are true, or even some of those things, that sounds like burnout to me. Or do you just feel unable to be creative? Like, are you having trouble coming up with ideas? Do you want to create, but it's just hard to do it? Are you in an objectively difficult part of the plot? Like your villain is backed into a corner and you don't know what they're gonna do? Or like, are you a perfectionist? You're worried about how people are gonna judge your DMing? Because those all feel like things that are more tied to like a writer's block situation. Because the solutions are different. I mean, if it's burnout, then the only solution is rest, which is a tough pill to swallow. I've been spitting that pill out like my cat with a gabapentin for several years, but that is truly the only solution. But if it's writer's block, then there's all kinds of things you can do to try and help. Like you can do some no pressure brainstorming, spitballing, where you like write stuff down and there's no bad ideas. You can look to media for inspiration. You can borrow or just straight up steal. There's tons of content out there. You truly do not need to do it all yourself. Why can't an Intelligence 9 barbarian multiclass into a wizard? Lore-wise, I think it's just like you are not smart enough to learn magic. But also there's no reason that your DM can't just be like, screw it. Sure, you can be a bad wizard. As long as that sounds fun to you, just get ready to like never land a single spell. I have a player at my table who is not behaving well. He wanted to be the group leader right away with no experience as a player, behaves risky in combat, and insults NPCs. How do I deal with him? Problem, he is my father-in-law. Yeah, that complicates things because it's always a challenge to handle like social conflicts at the table, but the minute that you have an external relationship with one of those players, it complicates that conversation. I got another question from somebody who said they have 2 extremely introverted players who won't put down their damn phones and roleplay, and those players are also related to them. So a similar social conundrum. It's more complicated because your real life family relationships can bleed into what's happening at the table and vice versa. Whatever happens at the table can bleed into your family relationships. There's kind of 2 answers to this. One is like the answer to the question of the bad behavior, like the father-in-law who is making risky moves in combat and like insulting NPCs. My first question then as a DM is like, what are the consequences for that? When he makes a risky move in combat, does he get hit? Does he take more damage? Do bad things happen? And if not, then it's not really a risky move, is it? Because you're not demonstrating that risk with consequences. And same with insulting NPCs. Like in the real world, if we walk around being rude to people, there are consequences for it. So are there consequences for it in your game? Is he getting away with insulting all your NPCs? Sometimes this can make things difficult for the other players at the table. So I think as a DM, it's important to be aware of whether or not the ways that you are dealing out consequences for that player's actions are disadvantaging the other players, because that sucks. But if your narrative is implying consequences, like danger in a battle or an NPC whose opinion matters, and then you're not actually delivering those consequences, then it's natural for players to push on those boundaries because they're not getting any pushback. As for the introverted players who are always on their phones, I know this is a little bit controversial, but I am a big fan of like a no phones at the table rule. This is controversial amongst neurodivergent folks because I think there are a lot of people who see phones as accessibility tools, and I get that. I think there are situations in which that's true, but I think in the vast majority of situations, phones are not an accessibility tool to neurodivergent people. They are a harm. Like for me, at least, as someone with ADHD, my phone is absolutely a harm to me. It is designed to distract me. That is like literally what it's made for. If you have players who really, really rely on their phones as accessibility tools for varying reasons, then of course, this is something that you would need to navigate at your own table. But I think that unless there is like a real good reason that they absolutely have to have their phone in hand the entire time you're playing, there is no reason not to say, okay, everybody's phones go in that basket by the door. We are focused on D&D right now. That's why we're here. But the sort of part 2 of this issue is the like family connections thing and why that makes it more complicated, which is that like it can be really uncomfortable to have that kind of conversation with the family member, especially like a father-in-law. That's a little bit of a charged relationship for a lot of people. I think the most important thing to remember is that it is not fair to your other players for people who are your family to like get a free pass for bad behavior. The rules should apply to everyone at the table. And if you can't enforce them evenly across family members and non-family members, then like you're inherently creating an atmosphere that's not fair to your other players. I know I recommended some like in-game ways to deal with this problem player behavior, but ultimately an above table conversation is always a good idea for working on this kind of thing. Like, people don't know that there's a problem unless you communicate it to them. This person even said that their father-in-law has no experience as a player. I don't know if that means that their father-in-law has experience as a DM or if this is their first time playing D&D, but like, you can't assume that people know what is and isn't good tabletop etiquette unless you communicate it to them. Just like I have advised you to not try and read people's minds, like you also can't rely on others reading your mind. You have to tell them what's going on.
Oh man.
I'm glad my therapist doesn't watch my channel because she'd probably be like, you're really butchering all the stuff I tell you. Is there a limit to how many ritual spells you can use at one time? Yes, ritual casting requires concentration, so you can only ritual cast one spell at a time. I gift my DM D&D material from time to time. In fact, I once gave him your deck of boons and banes. I just want to mention that this person typoed it and it says deck of boobs and banes. The After Dark deck. The deck of boobs and babes. Anyway, sorry, he is always appreciative, but isn't that perhaps inappropriate, seen as bribing or kissing up? Plenty of people get their GM's gifts. GMing is a challenging job. They're doing more work than players are, there's more pressure on them, and they're doing it all to provide players with a fun game. So I think it's totally reasonable and appropriate to demonstrate gratitude for that with a gift. I mean, ultimately, you're friends playing a game together. Like, this isn't your boss. I wouldn't worry too much about, like, is there a conflict of interest here? I'm not gonna say there are no DMs out there who take bribes, but I will say that I don't think that is common. I've certainly never met one that does that. I think most GMs would just be really grateful to feel like they're appreciated. I mean, we even saw that question before, several questions before from GMs who were like, how do I know my players are having a good time? I mean, I think that that should be a good sign that it's a good idea to make sure your GM knows that you appreciate them and you value the work they're doing, whether that's with gifts or with words of affirmation or whatever. And that's why you should all buy my Game Master's deck of boons and banes for your Game Master. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. How do you get comfortable playing a character whose ethics and morals differ from your own? Well, I mean, this is a game in which I think most of us kill a lot of like living creatures and people, so I think we're all probably playing a character whose morals differ from our own, at least a little. Logistically, I feel like knowing their ideals and like what motivates them, that makes it easier to figure out what someone with a different set of ethics would do in any given situation. But it sounds like this question is more about how to feel comfortable doing that rather than how to do that. The big ones to me would be making sure that your fellow players know that you are playing a character, because I think some of the discomfort of playing a character with different ethics is like you're afraid that other people at the table will think, oh my God, why would she make that decision? Like, what a horrible person. I think you have to be able to feel confident that your fellow players are not going to conflate the choices you make in character with who you are as a person in real life. That could be an above table conversation, but it really doesn't need to be that formal. I think, you know, even just like after a session, if you can be like, whoo, kind of crazy that my character did this, huh? I'd never do something like that. Like, that can be a casual part of conversation. And then I think comfort can also come from like creating distance between you and the character, because if you are feeling discomfort with like doing bad things, basically doing things that you consider bad, you have to remember that it's not you doing them, you know? So the more distance you have, the easier it is to remember that this is not about you, this is about your character. That might mean like doing a different voice for your character or like holding yourself different, anything that makes you just physically in your body be able to feel that you are not being yourself. It also might mean like role-playing in third-person language, like using their name to describe what they do instead of necessarily saying I. Or maybe it's just like trial by fire, do an evil campaign, and then you'll get over that real fast. I low-key don't get spell focuses. Foci? Focuses? Okay, so they basically just take the place of material components components that don't have an associated cost. So like Revivify, how it calls for a diamond of a certain value, a spell focus can't replace that. But if you're casting Fireball and it calls for Bat Guano, a spell focus replaces the Bat Guano. Component pouches do the same thing. This is basically just a way to erase the game mechanic of material components. Basically, anytime you see a material component listed that does not have a gold value attached to it, it isn't actually necessary because every spellcasting class can have a spell focus and then they don't need it. How do you build a story/character arc around a passive player? I have one player who rarely takes big swings, and this is their style of play in most games. I'm still wanting to serve their character well in the story, but I have a harder time coming up with hooks and plot devices for them to sink their teeth into. So I have two answers to this. One is if they're not choosing to engage with your plot hooks, that's fine. Just make your plot hooks engage with them. In one of my home games where I'm a player, there's a pretty cautious, passive player who tends to be pretty quiet, and we just recently went through a whole arc that was very tied to her character. And because of the way that that arc played out, she was put in a position of having to like make decisions and have major conversations with NPCs and like do difficult things because it was her story arc. I think it also helped that we, as her fellow players, were participating in that by deferring to her for all the major decisions during this plotline because like we knew that it was her sort of like backstory arc. Have NPCs speak directly to them. Put them in situations where they have no choice but to react. And if you feel like they're really struggling to like step in and make decisions, you can give them choices. For some players, the knowledge that they can do anything is very stressful. So if you're like, hey, if you don't agree to his deal, he's going to attack you. What is it? Is it a yes or a no? But the second point I want to make here is that some players just want to be passive players. Not everybody wants to be taking big swings and finds that fun and enjoyable. So I wouldn't necessarily try and force your player into engaging the way that you think they should engage, unless for some reason you think they're not having a good time and that they would like to be engaging more. Some people are just kind of along for the ride and they like it that way. Oh, here's a juicy one. Is D&D becoming woke? If so, is it bad for the hobby? Great question to ask a blue hair and pronouns D&D player such as myself. I mean, first of all, we can't really answer this at all without defining the word woke because it really does have two definitions depending on who is using the word. In its original modern slang usage, it just meant like being aware of social injustice, right? Like if you were woke, you were like awakened to the shit that was going on around you. Now, of course, conservatives are using it as kind of like a catch-all term for progressives, and I think it also comes with the implication of virtue signaling, like that you don't actually believe the things that you're saying, you're just saying them because that's what you're expected to say. If the question is D&D changing in response to social injustice? I think that answer is sort of like an objective yes, because we can point to those specific changes. You know, they've like made changes to inherently evil races, they've taken away racial ability scores, they like changed the way that the Vistani were represented. Now, whether or not that's because they want to do good or just because they want to sell products to people who care about that stuff, I don't know. And honestly, I don't really care. I don't have the expectation that corporations like carry love for humanity in their corporate hearts. Like that isn't necessary to me. What matters to me is the actions that they take, and if corporations are doing harm, don't like that. If they're doing good, like that. I don't really care about the motivation behind it, I care about the effects. So do I consider what Wizards of the Coast is doing as like an act of good? It's a mixed bag, you know, it's more than I can get into in this video, and certainly without a script. Is going woke bad for D&D, bad for the hobby? I mean, I think no. Obviously, that's tied to my own personal beliefs. Despite it all, I am still an optimist who believes in human kindness and empathy, and I think that despite bumps along the way, I do think that the arc of humanity curves towards justice. You know, if anybody disagrees with me on this, nothing I say in this video is gonna change their mind, so we'll leave it there. Why are mimics so popular? They're everywhere, despite there being much cooler monsters in the game. Don't listen to them, Boxan. They're just jealous. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions. I collected these with a free post over on my Patreon, so any of you could have submitted your own questions for the low, low price of $0 and clicking the right button. Let it be a lesson to you. And if you want to see why I'm so tired firsthand, go check out Trouble on the Fate Train in my shop. It's the culmination of many, many months of work, not just from me, but from an incredible team of creatives who probably all lost sleep over this. It was worth it though. I even got to write some of my own riddles Here, try this one out. I am feathered and I fly, yet I have no wing or eye. At my airborne journey's end, I'll find foe instead of friend. Yeah? Yeah, did you get it? No? The answer's in the book. Guess you gotta buy it.